So when you're raising kids, in the beginning, you're involved in everything. You're right on top of everything. And then as the years go on, you start giving them a little more freedom, letting them make a little more decisions, things like that, right? And then as it gets time for them to be close to moving out, the last year or two or three at least, hopefully you've been transitioning this whole time, but at the end you start realizing, hey, they're about to be out in this world by themselves, and you try to equip them, because all of us know instinctively that being just totally on your own is not beneficial, right? Everyone needs a leader. And so we start trying to give them a little freedom, but we talk to them. We try to help them make good decisions. We try to set them up with good leaders, and we pray for that they have good leaders at their work and at their school, and mentors that will help them raise their families well, right? All of these things, because we know that none of us do great when we don't have input from anyone else, when we don't have someone that might know a little bit more than us leading us. And this is what we're going to see in the history of Israel at this point, that every time that the Israelites have a good, strong leader, they seem faithful to God. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But the second that leader dies, they begin to stray away. And so we're going to talk about the first 3 judges today and the history of Israel with these judges and then without them, and why the judges have to come again. And then we're going to talk about ourselves and how we need leaders and the system that God has set up for us so that we do have godly people leading us. So we talked about the first couple of verses of Judges 3, not last week, but the week before. And now we're in verse 5, and it just talks about how the people have allowed these other nations to live in their midst, even though God told them to eradicate all of these people from their land. They've allowed them to live there, and now they're worshiping other gods, and they've intermarried with these people, which is what God told them would end up happening if they let the people live there. And so they've done this. And so it says they did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they strayed away from him, and they worshiped other gods. And so God, it says in verse 8, sold them into the hand of the king of Mesopotamia. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce this king's name, but the name means double wickedness. That's what it says. And so most likely that's not what his actual name was. His name was probably not double wickedness, but the author is probably saying he sold us into the hand of that double wicked king. That's what they're trying to say. And the king of Mesopotamia was probably what is now Syria, that area up there. And God says he sold them into their hand. And they served the king of Mesopotamia for 8 years because they have decided to worship other gods. And God told them that this is what would happen if they worshiped other gods, that he would turn his back on them and allow them to go be taken over by other nations. And so they served them for 8 years, but it says when they cried out to the Lord, then God sent a deliverer who would save them. And these are the judges. So this is going to be the cycle. They're going to disobey God, turn away from him, and then they're going to cry out, and he's going to send a judge to save them from their oppression from these other nations. And so the first one is Othniel. And remember, this man is Caleb's brother from the tribe of Judah. And he's the one of Caleb's brothers who, when Caleb asked, is anybody willing to defeat this nation Deber? He said, yes, I'll do that. And he said, okay, if you will defeat them, then I'll give you my daughter in marriage and I'll give you that land. And this is that Othniel. So he rose up, and it says the Spirit of the Lord was with him, and he judged Israel. What that really means is he exacted justice for Israel. And so he defeated the king of Mesopotamia, and then it says he led the people after that. He was their governor, and they had rest for 40 years, for the whole lifetime of Othniel. But as soon as Othniel died, then the people did what was evil in the sight of the Lord again. This is verse 12. And it says, the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel. And it says that that king also gathered with him the Ammonites and the Amalekites. And so Moabites and the Ammonites are Lot's descendants, if you will remember. And these are the people that live in the south and the east of the tribes that lived on the eastern side of the Jordan in the country of what is now Jordan. So they bordered Israel in the east, and then the Amalekites were descendants of Esau, and they lived in the south below the land that Judah got. And so all of these people are descendants of Abraham. The ones, Ammonites and the Moabites being Lot's children, and then the Amalekites being Esau's children. And God did not allow the Israelites to touch the Moabites or the Ammonites, because he said he gave that land to Lot's children because they were Abraham's descendants. And so these people are now coming against them, but God would not have ever allowed that to happen if the Israelites would have just continued to worship him, because these are supposed to be their family. But the Amalekites have not been allies to Israel. From the time that they came out of Egypt, it said that the Amalekites attacked them completely unprovoked. When they were tired and weary from fleeing from the Egyptians, the Amalekites came out and attacked them. And so God told them at that time, I want you to completely eradicate the Amalekites. And when Moses was given kind of his last address to the people, he told them, don't forget to eradicate all of the Amalekites when God gives you rest in the land. So what they were supposed to do is they were supposed to defeat all the people living in the promised land. And then when they had rest with them, they were supposed to go and defeat the Amalekites and then take over all of that land further south. And then Judah was supposed to get all of that there in the Negev, all of that little V that is in Israel. But right now, Judah just has, a little portion of it, and the Amalekites have the rest of the land down there. And because they never even defeated all the people within their land, they certainly never got to the Amalekites. So now the Amalekites have joined forces with Moab and the Ammonites. And so all of these people on their south and on their east are attacking them. And God has allowed them to defeat them. And it says that they overtook the city of palms. And they say that that was a wording that they would use for Jericho. And so apparently palm trees have risen up around the outskirts of Jericho. And this is what they call that area now. And so the Moabites have overtaken that area. And it says that God allowed them to be basically a vassal state of the Moabites for 18 years. And then the people cry out to him, same as before. Verse 15. And the Lord raised up a deliverer for them named Ehud. And it says that this man was from the tribe of Benjamin, and he was left-handed. It tells us that right off. And you kind of wonder why, but it becomes relevant. And so he was tasked with taking the tribute to the king of Moab. But before he left, he wields a double-edged sword, and he hides it in his clothing. And so he takes this tribute, and he has this sword that's like 1.5 feet long hidden in under his clothes in his thigh. And so the left-handed becomes relevant because he grabs it from his right thigh. So after he gives the tribute to Eglon, he tells him, hey, I've got a secret for you. And so Eglon says, okay, I'll send everyone away. And then they go up on the roof and they're sitting in the cool of the day, and Ehud raises up and he says, I have a message from you from the Lord. This is the secret. The secret is coming from God. And then as he stands up, he grabs his sword and plunges it into the king's belly. And it says that this king is so heavy that his fat encloses around the handle so that it can't be pulled out. And so you can't even see this sword in the man's stomach. And so it's pierced all the way through and the fat is enclosed around the sword. And then Ehud just casually walks out, locks the door behind him, and goes about his way. So the people come, his servants, and they realize, oh, well, he's left, but the doors are locked. The king must want some privacy. So they just leave him alone for a while. Well, after a little bit, it's like, okay, it's been too long. We need to go in. And so they unlock the door and they find the king dead. Well, by that time, Ehud's already escaped. He's in Israel now and he's blowing the victory trumpets, right? And all the people come and gather around him and he says, hey, follow me. So this is what the judges do. They're leaders. So he says, follow me. And he goes out to the crossings where the Jordan is, because, Moab is on the other side of the Jordan. And so he goes to the low river crossings and he blocks them off and he doesn't let anyone pass. And they kill, it says 10,000 Moabites that day, strong and able-bodied Moabites that they kill. And so they've defeated them and they've got their nation back. And Ehud is their leader. And it says that they had rest for the next 80 years because he was leading them. And so they were faithful. But as soon as he dies, the people again are unfaithful to God. And God has to raise up another leader. And this leader we do not learn hardly anything about. It is one verse, and this is what it says about him. It says, after Ehud, was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he saved Israel. So that's it. We know nothing else. We don't know if the people were oppressed by the Philistines. My assumption is that they just had a battle with the Philistines and this guy saved them. He was the leader of the battle and he saved them from the Philistines by killing 600 of them with an ox goad. Now, an ox goad, it says, was 8 inches long and like 6 inches around. It's this big, stout stick. And at the end of it, one side has a metal sharp end for poking the ox. And then the other side is a flat end that's metal and curved. And they use it to clean out the plow. And so he took this 8-inch long, heavy stick and killed, it says, 600 Philistines with it. Now, what's also mysterious about this man is it says he's the son of Anath. And Anath was the goddess of the Canaanites. Now, there could have been another Anath, but no one knows who this is other than this goddess of the Canaanites. And so it's possible that he was a foreigner that they had allowed to live, but he's incorporated himself into the Israelites at this point, and God has allowed this foreigner to save the Israelites. Now, has he adopted their faith, or does he just not want to be killed himself, so he fights with them? We have no idea. This is a very mysterious judge, but it doesn't really seem that anything big happens with this judge other than he rescues them from the Philistines and then they go about their business. It doesn't tell us that they had rest after him or anything like that. So that is the whole story about the first 3 judges.